Welcome back to the latest episode of the Women That Get Shit Done podcast. We've got the mighty, amazing international athletes, Team GB, Be Super, and Team Frangipani SUP coach, amongst various other things. Anni Riddsill-Smith with us today. How are you, Annie?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm very excited.
Not a
lovely
problem.
to be here. Lovely to be here.
The pleasure is ours.
Yes, we are very excited to have you here, Annie. Thank you for joining us.
So kind, thank you. That's very kind of you.
So let's crack on, shall we? Right, I'm going to open up. So, obviously we had a bit of a chat before, Annie, and found out a bit about you, and I think it's stuff that our viewers would love to know about too. So you said it in that conversation that your sort of sports life, as it were, began when you were at school. You didn't particularly see yourself at sporty, but you did do a lot of different sports at school.
Yeah,
so when you
absolutely.
look back, what did it give you?
Well, do you know, I didn't think about it. I didn't really think about it at the time, and I didn't really think about it until quite recently. But I went to a comprehensive school, and we had a really great PE teacher and team, and we were just given access to loads of sports. You know, hockey and rounders and netball and long jump and high jump and track and javelin and discus and cross country and badminton and gymnastics. There's just all this sport going on. And I remember the PE teacher, she was this sort of small little lady. She had a clipboard. She's very small and quiet. And she had this clipboard with her all the time, little hands and little handwriting. She'd just appear from nowhere, right? You'd be standing there, eat a bag of crisps, and she'd suddenly be next to you, and you'd be like, "Oh, hello, miss." And she'd say, right. So on Thursday, you've been selected to throw discus for the school at the competition on Thursday. Okay. And you'd be like, "Yes, miss, that's great," having another crisp. And, "Miss, you know, what is a discus?" And, you know, and you just got all this opportunity to just do stuff. And, you know, she came with the clipboard was always there, and your name was always somewhere on the clipboard. And I remember once doing cross country. It was snowy, it was cold. I think we had bare legs. I don't know why. We were in skirts or shorts or something. And I think possibly even in those horrible little plimp soles. And she'd be like, right, she'd be with a clipboard, and she'd be like booting you out of the back of the PE, and you'd have to go around the fields and around the school fields and then out into the fields. And I remember it was like freezing cold. I thought I was going to die. My lungs were on fire. You know, you do the loop, and you knew she'd sort of got a beady eye, but you'd come around the corner and there'd be like a couple of your mates stopped having a fag, and they'd be like, "Hey, Annie, come and have a fag." And I was very like try hard. I'm like, no, I must keep running. And I think it was just probably all of that exposure to loads of sport. And competitions, you know, you're put in teams and chucked in competitions, and at the time you just got on with it. But I think in hindsight, it gave you a really healthy relationship to sport, even though you didn't think like that. And it was a lot of fun. And also I think it put you into competitions, you know, it's just school level competitions. But yeah, you won, you lost, your team won, your team lost, you won, you lost. And I think it was just a really healthy relationship that it you know, it gave you as a sort of, you know, 12 to 16-year-old.
So out of all those sports, Annie, what one did you enjoy most?
I loved hockey.
Yes.
I loved hockey. It was brutal. Again, you know, we were like running around I think we had shin pads, but I can't remember. Yeah, it was just brutally, it was fun, yeah.
I remember our goalkeeper had like cricket pads on and like a cricket helmet and these really massive half helmet buckled shoes on their feet, and they could barely walk across the pitch. I was just thinking, I am never going in goal. I think Tracy was our goalkeeper.
Yeah.
No. What position did you play?
Brave. Crikey, I can't remember. Whatever I was told, whatever the clipboard said, the mighty clipboard. Do you know what I can't remember? I'm going to have to go and ask my friend that. I was trying to remember that today. I can picture her. She was very, yeah. And if you've forgotten any kit, like, you know, if you didn't have the whatever socks or something, it'd be like, "I forgot my socks." It'd be like, get to the lost property box and go and get some out of there. There's no messing about. It's just get on with it, you know.
You grew up with that very get on with it attitude.
Yeah, definitely.
And it sounds like it sparked that competitive edge.
Yeah, I think, again, when you're a kid, I don't think you really, you know, or you're when you're a teenager, you don't really think about it, do you? You just get on and do it. You just get put into it, and you don't sort of stand there and go, "Oh, hey, look, I'm being put into a competitive sport at school, and this is going to mean X, Y, and Z. You just get on with it with your mates. But yeah, I definitely find now that I look back on that and think that's probably where I got some of that enjoyment of competition from. Definitely. I think competition's great. It's a fantastic place to be, isn't it? In relationship to yourself and others, it's an interesting part of life, isn't it? Being in some sort of competition.
So, interesting statistic, which I'm sure you know, about girls in sport. So, a lot of girls get teenage years and they drop out of sport. Why do you think that is?
Boys. Yeah, boys. Probably, like peer pressure. I don't know. It's just not a. I don't think it's an easy mix, is it? If you're sort of dealing with teenage angst and I don't know, you've got friends and you're going out and people want to socialise, and I'm trying to think what happened. Yeah, like going to uni, maybe that, or your kind of your patterns and your rhythms, like if your life change and if you have to go and study somewhere else.
I think as well, boys are more, well, certainly when I was growing up, it's more like boys could consider a career in sport, but maybe girls, it wasn't so much of a thing,
Yeah, and I didn't see myself as sporty, I had a friend who was a track runner and she was amazing. And she had spikes on her shoes, and I just thought that was amazing. She was an amazing runner, and for me, she was sporty. I was just a school kid, having a bit of fun doing the sport. And, like she was in a club and a team and she trained and all of that. That wasn't what we did. We just got out and got a clipboard and were told to go and, go and do X and go and you're competing there tomorrow and you're on the school team for that. And it just made it up as we went along.
The way your PE classes were determined by a clipboard, I think that's amazing. So with your adult life, so you've left school, I take it you're not doing any sport regularly when you've left school. You've gone into a career?
Yeah, so I've always sort of done fitness, but just as a sort of recreational sort of fitness, just, going down the gym, doing classes, bit of running, bit of this, bit of that, and didn't really, just got on with working, got on with just sort of, life. Is it, you're trying to find a job, trying to get some money, trying to, partner up with someone, try and get a home, that sort of stuff, raise a family, and didn't do anything like that at all until I suppose the next bit of sport was when I got married to Mike. Mike was in the army and he was a really, really good sailor. Was sailing at a high level, and he's very, very good sailor, and I'd never done any sailing at all, so he taught me to sail. He was the helm, I was the crew, and then we basically started competitive dinghy sailing together. And this is before we had any kids. We loved that. We travelled all around the country. We went over to Europe, I think, once for the Europeans, and we raced something called an RS400, which he was the crew, I was the helm. So it's got a main sheet, it's got a jib, and it's got quite a big spinnaker. And I basically wasn't sort of like hooked in to a trapeze or anything like that, but I was hiking and he would sit behind me and I'd be controlling it. And we did a lot of racing like that and a lot of competitions, and loved that, really loved that.
Nice. So you got this get on with it attitude at school and this competitive side that carried on into your adult life, as you said, after you married Mike and you got into the dinghy racing. But where does that actually come from, do you think? Is that something that like your family drilled into you, or? I
think it's school. I mean, I can remember being in primary school and there being races. I can remember lining up on a start line and having to race to the end, whatever that might have been doing. I just remember at a very young age at school, there was competition in a nice way, like in a fun way, but it was like, right, we're going to have a race now. And I think that just must be, I'm assuming that must be where it came from, because my family aren't competitive. My family don't do sports or anything like that. It's not like I've grown up with that at home. I think we had a very outdoorsy life when we were kids. We were bought a couple of bikes. My sister and I are very close in age, and we were bought a couple of bikes, and we lived in quite an open heathland. So I think we spent an awful lot of time outside. But I do think school just exposed us to competition at a pretty young age.
Everything with school, I think, is kind of a competition, isn't it? Even just you look at like learning to read and write is a competition within themselves, isn't it? With young persons.
Times tables, yeah.
Yeah, it's how we engage them, isn't it, going
Yeah.
forward? A bit like with your coaching, isn't it? How we engage. But obviously, you've gone the dinghy sailing. You've had a great time with that. It sounds like the competitions with Mike. How about being a parent? So I know we've touched base with the righteous mum about her parenting and supping and sport and everything. But how did becoming a parent change how you engage with sport?
I was very fortunate. We had a period of living overseas. So we moved overseas when my first son was 11 months old and the second son was born overseas. And the climates were very conducive to, well, not all the time, it was a bit hot. But so, yeah, you had a mountain bike. And when they were little, I could do a bit like that, my mountain bike and yoga. But as they got older, and not a lot older actually, but then their sport became paramount, like it. And if they're playing on teams through like their sport, they're on different schedules with their sport, then it's all about them. The whole weekend could be taken up just with their stuff. And so our sailing stopped. I finished a race in the RS 400. It was a weekend of racing on the River Medway. And it was a pretty brutal weekend. It was quite windy. And then I realised that after that race had finished, I then realised I was pregnant. And then I stopped then. That was like, right, that's not a good idea. I shouldn't really be doing that. And then we'd go back to it. The dinghy racing stopped, and we did a bit of we did a bit of other sailing, but we just found that with the kids we couldn't. We had to put them first really, and them first in their sport. If they wanted to, or whatever they wanted to do, we had to kind of traipse around with them.
Are you one of those last minute soccer mums, or have you got everything like planned the night before?
No, but I tell you what, it was actually on watching them play their sport, and I found myself a couple of times getting quite frustrated about stuff, like if someone didn't get picked for a team, or they got dropped off a team, or there was a bad decision. I found myself getting a bit wound up and a bit overly interested in their sport, and I thought, right, that's not right. I need my own sport. That's their sport. I can't live through their sport, and I think that's probably where the paddleboarding then popped up, and then it just sort of happened that I wanted to race in paddleboarding, and I think that was because it was a case of, look, I want to race for me. I can't. It's theirs. That's them. This is me. Stop being, like competitive mum. No, who cares whether a 10-year-old got dropped or 11-year-old? You just had to back off from that, really.
So when did you first try SUP?
In Lanzarote with Christian Diaz, a wonderful guy in Lanzarote. So we were on holiday, and I was tucked on the sunbed on the last day of the holiday, and the kids weren't that old. And Mike came bounding around. He said, "Hey, I booked us a paddleboard lesson." I'm like, "What? It's the last day. I don't want to get off the sunbed." No. And then he's like, "Come on, I've paid for it." So we all went and did it, and it was just amazing. I can remember to this day, we had such a laugh. They started us on a lake, and then they put us on the sea, and it was just such a laugh. Yeah, fall off, get on, fall off, get on. Which I still do now. Nothing's changed.
That's because you're pushing. You're pushing. Is it?
You're not wet, you're not trying hard enough. Yeah.
Exactly that, isn't it? If your hair's not wet, you're not trying hard
Yeah,
enough.
exactly.
I say that to Scott a lot because he told me that.
So you're in your office then when you tried SUP for the first time?
Yeah, it must have been there or thereabouts. Yeah.
For many women, they sometimes feel it's too late for them to try something new at that sort of age. Or, as you said, you were focusing on the kids all the time and all of their activities. So you were now finding something for you, it sounds like, from the enjoyment that you got from paddleboarding. What did SUP then unlock for you at that point in your life?
I think that there's a point in your life when, if you've got kids, you've got school age kids, and you're working, and it's a bit of a blur. You can look back on that and go, hey, where did that decade just go? Because you're just in this blur of schools, as you know, they create these cycles, don't they? And you live to the rhythm of the school cycle, and you're trying to work, and you're with the kids, and la 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 la. So what did SUP do? I think SUP got me back on the water, actually, having done the dinghy sailing, then had a sort of hiatus because of the kids. I think SUP was like, do you know what? This is a really easy way to get back on the water. We haven't got to rig this dinghy. We haven't got to, do all the moving parts that go with this this, quite high performance dinghy, but I can just literally jump on the water and go, and we could do it together, so that we all four of us got a paddleboard. And we all, as a family, went paddling, and we did. Oh my goodness! I mean, thinking back now, the kids got dragged on some adventures. Hey, we're going to do this 2-day, 40-kilometer paddle part of this, city to the sea, and you're going to come too. And you're only like, but I'm only 10. Shut up and get on with it. It's kind of, they just start, we're like, wow, they've just paddled quite a long way.
I've just spent 10 years following you around with your sports and activities. Now get on with it.
Yeah, that did actually happen on the first, not the first race, but once I decided I was racing, I do remember saying to all of them, all three, Mike and the two boys, I was like, I wanted to go to this race, and there was a bit of kickback, I'm like, look, just get in and I did use a rude word, get in the van, all of you, because mum's going racing, you're going to come and support me, I'm going to do it, and you're going to come and support me, get in the van. I was very inappropriate mum. I was like, get in the van, strap in, be quiet, because we're going to a race, and mummy's going to do the race, and you're going to cheer me on. And so they all sat in silence as we drove to wherever it was, Nottingham or something.
Annie, though, can you please tell our viewers, again, we had a pre-recording chat, and you told us a brilliant story about the first
ever race.
Yeah, please, can you tell our viewers that story?
The lovely Drew Wood from ABSUP, and of course Hobbsy, you'll know Carl Hobbs, so they ran ABSUP down on the River Hamble, and they were part of our reason. A lot of the reasons why we got into SUP was because that crew down there, they were running this. They said, we're going to run this 5-mile race, come on down, bring the boys. So we hadn't got a clue what we're doing, so we get down there, and as a good mum, because we're in the camper van, so each boy had a pot noodle. He's never let me forget that. These two little lads with a pot noodle. So all four of us get on the start line, and they're like, right, you're going to paddle that way, then you're going to turn around, you're going to paddle back. That's 5 miles. So we're kind of getting ready. And then these kind of really cool people started coming out of the woodwork. So I sort of looked to my left. I can still picture it. I now know a lady's called Jo Hamilton Vale. But Jo Hamilton Vale was getting on a paddleboard, and she was, wearing like athletics clothing. It was white. She had like white athletic clothing on. She was a real athlete. And she had this amazing race board, and she just sort of got on it, and off she went. And I looked at that and I thought, oh, right, this is actually a proper sport. Okay, right, that's interesting. And then I walked past the van, and the van was the door was half ajar. And again, I didn't know at the time, but Ryan James was in the van just resting, right? So, these are some of our best athletes. And then we all line up on the water, and got the kids there. And they send the fleet, send the fleet up the river. So they all tanked off. And there's Mike and I and the two kids. And I just thought, I've got to go. So I just turned to Mike and I said, I've got to go with them. And he's like, off you go then. So I did. So I then chased them. Because by that point they'd all disappeared. So I then chased them along the river. And then as they came back, Ryan James was coming back. He was bare-chested apart from his heart rate strap. And I thought, this is a good sport. I like this sport. And he then spoke to me. I thought, oh my gosh, this person's actually spoken to me. I've been acknowledged. And at that point, I thought, okay, this is a really cool place to be. These are real athletes. This is a real sport, and this is a race, and I'm in it. And from that moment forward, it was done. I was in love with it.
Love that.
And Carl Hobbs, I'm sure Carl Hobbs isn't watching, but if he is, pot noodles are the food of champions. All right, Carl, just remember that.
And the perfect food for hangovers too. So, how long have you been racing for, Annie?
This is my 14th year.
14th year.
14th year. Yeah, I've raced in 13 countries, 4 World Championships, 2 European Championships, multiple national club championships, series, standalone races. Yeah, really, I haven't stopped. So that from that moment on the handball, I haven't stopped.
Wow. So
well, I mean, I've taken a break. I don't race all year round, but every single year, from that moment forward, I identified as a SUP racer.
That's a real love you've got for that sport, huh?
Yeah, I love it.
What made you want to race for Team England, Team GB, Team England?
I saw pictures of, and I knew that it's such a small sport, right? So who goes to what teams, and I knew the people that were selected for the first ICF Worlds in China. I'd seen pictures of my friends on the beach, and I was like, sitting here at home, and I bought a T-shirt to support the team, and I sat there and I thought, I want to be that. I want to be there. You know, I want to be part of that. That's my dream. And I really wanted it. And again, I don't know where that came from, but it was this kind of just a real desire to do it.
I think you're a great representation of what women can do, especially, you know, as we've said, you got into this sport not as a teenager, as a lot of them are now, but as a woman. And I wonder how powerful you think it is to have that representation, especially for women, seeing as what can be done later in life.
No, yet again, it wasn't something I even thought of. You know, it wasn't. I suppose you were talking earlier on about home and school. It was just you just kind of did it. You know, you didn't take yourself too seriously. You just kind of got on and did it. And that was certainly how I felt about wanting this. And it wasn't until I'd done it, and I was uber proud. It was the most terrifying moment of my entire life, was standing up on that start line in Denmark. And I looked left and right, and literally I was old enough to be their mother. But I was so absolutely 100% delighted to be there, because I thought, I'm representing my country and it's legit, right? And all I've got to do is run down this beach, launch, paddle out around that buoy, paddle back in, run up with the flag, and that's done. That's me done. You know, I didn't have any expectations that I was going to, you know, kind of get any medals. So in answer to your question, so then I was quite I was quite thoughtful about it, thinking, well, you know, isn't that interesting that I felt so comfortable doing that? And then I got shortlisted. There were 3 people shortlisted for Essex Sports Personality of the Year after that. And they said that I'd been shortlisted because I'd shown that there was competitive sport available, and that competition was still available to people who had a family and had raised a family. And again, I was in that moment where I had a sort of an Olympic gymnast who was about, I don't know, 19 or 20, and then a phenomenal paddle sports athlete who was, they were again old enough to be their mother. But that kind of didn't matter. What mattered was the fact that I respected them fully for what they'd done. And I think, they fully respected me for what I'd done. I don't know, maybe they didn't, but I don't care. But I was there, and that was the statement, I suppose. But it wasn't intentional. That wasn't ever, I didn't even enter into it. It was like, I want it so badly that I don't really care about anything else. It was like, I just want to be there. I want to be on that beach, and I want to do it. And I want to have that, that moment.
So that's an amazing personal success, Annie.
Well, thank you. I mean, I can tell you how I made it happen, but I think if I tell you how I made it happen, then I'm starting to talk about how I played the loopholes, how I played the odds, how I played the game, how I knew things that had been missed in the processes, how I knew where the gaps were, how I knew how people were going to think on selection day, the fact they were all going to race hard on the distance and they weren't going to give any thought to sprint, the fact that if I just picked sprint, I had a fighting chance. So I played the game because I knew the game really well, because I've been racing for so many years. So you can talk about this kind of magical manifesting, which did go on because I wanted it really badly, but also it was backed up by this really sharp understanding of the process and knowing how to play the game and how to spot an opportunity and exploit it.
And I think a huge amount of discipline, self-belief, you had all of that going on as well. The fact that you wanted it and you knew you could do it.
I wanted it so badly. And I was waiting for the offer to come, and it was full moon. There's a lot of emotions. I was really amped by it. I was really, wanted it. I wanted it so badly. I could, I was literally just like bursting with it. And yeah, it was. I'm pleased. I'm pleased it all came together.
I'm all pleased for you.
Thank you.
I think it's amazing that you've taken that opportunity, and it's proof that at whatever age that you can, despite all your research and everything, you've manifested that and it's happened. So the full moon actually worked in your advantage, Annie.
I use it all the time. I work with the moon cycles, so I kind of, yeah.
So with that, like you've just said about doing that, kind of like, I know how it works, I've done that research with it, I've spotted an opportunity. Is that what kind of moved you into creating Frangipani SUP?
No, so Frangipani SUP was there in 2013. So Frangipani SUP was running, was happening, and my race thing was happening parallel to it. And so the two things were just sort of going together. I think it's also, I mustn't forget to give real credit here, is to Seychelle Webster, who was my coach. I'm waxing lyrical about all these things, but without Seychelle, there's no way those things that I just described would have happened. I met her at a moment where it was just the right moment. It was just it was meant to be. We came together and we worked together, and without her, I wouldn't have done it. And to be honest, most of it's up here, and that's where she really, she was amazing.
Yeah, she's really humble, really grounded, despite her standings and everything in the world. I found her an incredibly humble person, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Well, and as a coach, you're not too bad yourself, eh? Are you?
Thank you.
So you mentioned Seychelle is someone that you've worked with as your coach, and now you've got Frangipani SUP team and your coaching business. Now, I know you worked previously in your other working career in conflict resolution, and there was an element of psychology in there which feeds a lot into coaching, doesn't it? So how do you work as a coach to help people define what their success looks like?
Well, that's a lot of what I do, is basically work with people's confidence, really. So they find me as a coach, not the other way around, so that they'll find me. And then I'll start to listen and understand their sort of story and what brought them to this point, and try and get a sort of a feel for how I can perhaps assist them. And I say to them, look, you're the driver, you're in the driving seat, I'm the passenger, I'm in the passenger seat. And probably, like a bit of a navigator as well. So how can we work together? And I really feel that if you want something badly enough, you can make it happen. And I also think that stand-up paddleboard racing and events and competitions and things like that are a really great place for people to be, because it just gives you something in your life that is yours, because you're on the stand-up paddleboard on your own. You're not with a team. It is, you're responsible for yourself, and you are out there. I think it gives people some part of their life that is for them, and they can perhaps re-identify with themselves as somebody that can dream and should find time to ask themselves, what do you really want? What's your big dream? What would it be? Or it can be as simple as just having the confidence to go and do their first race. And time again, exactly that. I'll say to them, well, look, you define your own success. You hold that. That's yours to hold. So you define what success looks like for you, and do it in such a way that you don't fall into any bear traps about external validation, about I must win. Well, what happens if you don't win? It's okay. It's fine to say I want to win. Of course you want to say that, but what happens if you don't win? What you're left with? So it's kind of sort of saying, let's just take a slightly different view of this. Let's just look about how you want to feel and what that looks like. So I can probably give a really good example of this, right? So Seychelle, who was my coach, and I know and admire her, and she won a gold medal in sprinting in Thailand, and I was there and I watched it happen. And when she won the gold, she was so elated and overjoyed. She smashed the water with her hand. She was like splashing the water. I think the paddle got thrown away. And I watched it and I was like so stoked for her. And then afterwards I was thinking about it and I thought, right, that's the feeling I want to have, right? I want to feel that. So then I thought, well, what do those, put words around that? What does that, what is that thing? And then I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, right, that's what I want to feel. I want to manifest that feeling. I want to aim for that feeling in my sport. I want to imagine it, live it. And of course, there's a whole lot of processes that go with it, like training and nutrition and all that hard work. But that's the feeling I want to have, but not put any expectations around what might create that feeling. And it wasn't until I got out to the World Championships in Abu Dhabi just this October, I came third in a heat, right? But I had that feeling. I felt at the end of it, it's the same, the feeling that I thought it was going to be. I was smacking the water. I was so overjoyed with my performance. So she wins a gold medal. I come third in a heat, but that was success for me. And that felt awesome. And I think it's giving people the freedom to say, look, you define the success, no one else. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. It's what you think that matters. And I think that is, you have to work on it. But I think that's a really happy place to be.
So it sounds like your definition of success is that love, that feeling of joy from whatever you wanted to get from that race or that competition? Not the winning, but the feeling of how well you did for yourself.
Being in love with it, absolutely. For this year, for 2026, I always start the year with checking in with myself as to why I do it, because I need to know the deep reasons for doing it, right? Because if you don't know those, I think you can get a bit adrift. So I always check in with myself and think, right, let's just go through the process. Like, what's the deep meaning for being here? And yes, the answer that came at the beginning of January was, it's because I love the sport and I want to help other people love the sport, and that's why I show up.
So with Team Frangipani, with that in mind, obviously, like you say, it's been going a little while now. How do you keep reinventing it? How do you keep it alive?
I mean, SUP's gone through its kind of growth and its growth cycle, hasn't it? So when we first started Frangipani SUP, people didn't know what SUP was. They were like, what are you doing? What is that? Can you teach me? And then it's gone through this huge explosion through COVID. And we've had to sort of reinvent it, the business to go with it. I suppose it's the freedom, because it's a little lifestyle business at the end of the day, right? If anybody thinks they're going to go into water sports to make money, forget it. Spoiler alert, you do it because you love it. So I think if you keep loving it, you want it to sort of you're on a journey with it, and therefore you can keep reinventing it. We always said we'll do it until it's not fun anymore. When it stops being fun, we'll stop doing it.
So you with your Be Super hat on as well, okay? I talk to a lot of people about, obviously, my photography and the sports that I cover. Stand-up paddleboard racing isn't that dominant in the UK. What will you say to people that go, what are you talking about? Help me pitch it.
What do you mean, as in what you're talking about in relationship to the whole thing, or?
Just like, so if one of my colleagues has a paddleboard, goes out in the water, and I went, oh, did you know you can actually race it?
Okay, they'll go,
like, no. Yeah.
They're like, look at you like, what, you moron? This is a blow-up bag of hot air, and I'm just like using it to like park my picnic. What do you mean, race it?
Yeah, and I go, no, there's 14-foot like fiberglass boards.
That's right. That's the conversation you have to have, which is like, yes, they exist, and you've probably never seen one. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody that owned a paddleboard took it in the direction? Well, obviously not everyone, so they don't have to. But if a large proportion of them looked at it and went, it's a sport that I've just entered here. I'm now in a new sport, and I'm going to go away and explore it as a sport. Wouldn't it be amazing?
Yeah.
Not just a picnic blanket on the water.
A platform for the kids to like jump off.
Yeah, jump off or be paddled into a branch. Okay. I think that's amazing, absolutely amazing. And all those persons that I know that are part of Team Frangipani SUP absolutely love it. And I think as high as what you hold a Seychelles in high regard, they hold you in that regard as well, for that support and that help and that opportunity you give them.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say.
Not just as a race coach, but everything else that you put around it, the holistic approach, the nutrition approach, that guidance that you give. So it just goes to prove like that success that you've had with Team GB and competing in the worlds and everything. They use that as inspiration and motivation.
Oh, well, that's fantastic to hear. And then in that case, I can go and splash the water because that makes me feel great. The fact
Go for the bath.
Help it. Yeah.
So, Annie, you truly are a woman that gets shit done. I know you work really hard. You wear multiple hats. You work on yourself as well. I know journaling and having a growth mindset is a big part of what you do for your own racing. And not caring about what other people think. So how do you personally learn to let go of those external judgments?
Oh, well, the cat's arrived. Because of the things you've just said, the work on myself, you're doing those things, you're just finding what my own success looks like, truly thinking about it and visualizing it and then holding myself accountable to that. So if you start to sabotage, it's just, spotting self-sabotage if it starts to happen, just sort of being mindful that you have to work at this stuff. And that's what I think makes it interesting. That's what I think makes competition interesting, right? Because it cuts to the very sort of core of, of like who you are and why you show up and what happens when you come, you know, you screw up and you get it all wrong and you think you're making a fool of yourself, but you know how do you cope with that? How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with the whole chimp talk that goes on, like how we can undo ourselves, you know, so it's hard work.
So what would be your biggest top tip on that?
On removing those external judgments.
Define your own success before you go to anything. If you're going to race tomorrow, you know, don't go to, well, my advice is, you know, it's sensible to go to that event if you're trying to sort of learn with what does success look like for me already sorted out. And it could just be a list of things like, I'm going to be on the start line on time with all the correct kit warmed up, you know, and that might be point number one. So there's a lot of work that goes into that doesn't just happen. You know, the success list could be huge, and it can turn into a process, or it could just be, I'm going to fully grateful at every moment in the race, for every breath I take, for everything around me, for the fact that I am here, that I am participating, that I have the ability, and I am grateful for the fact that I've been able to self-determine, that, you know, I've been able to decide to do something and do it, because not everybody can do that, right? People are busy working, they're busy paying bills, they can't get their heads up, you know, so it's all very well for people like me to sit here and talk about sport like, oh yeah, you know, all mindset and growth and all that, but I couldn't have done that when I was trying to pay the mortgage and run around after the kids, and you know, so.
Is that why they want a pot noodle?
That's before I became a nutrition coach.
They were carb loading, Annie, carb loading before a race. It's fine.
It was a bribe, actually. It was more of a bribe. It's like, Mum, we don't want to go. Yes, you do. No, we don't. Yes, you do. If I give you a pot noodle, will you come? All right, then.
So then for the women listening to this who love something, whether that's sport or whatever it is in life, but they don't feel good enough yet to fully claim it, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd applaud them, because if they've got some love for something, then I think that's fantastic. Just stick with that. Stick with the love. If something's going to flow from that, it will. You know, just trust the universe on that. I'm a big believer in timing. The timing of things aren't always obvious, but if you've got a love for something, just enjoy it. Just continue to nurture that love.
Great advice. In fact, that even something for me today has come up, and I'm going to take that exact advice and hold on to that.
That's nice.
Amanda, do you want to run through our quick fire round with Annie?
You ready, Annie?
I am born ready for the quick fire round.
Okay, so Annie, what is your favourite food?
Any dark green leafy vegetable. I know that makes me sound weird, but that is the truth.
Okay, didn't expect you to say that. SUP racing or dinghy racing?
Dinghy racing was insanely good fun, but yeah, SUP racing now.
Favourite place to paddle?
Just here, behind Northey Island on the Blackwater Estuary. So I just have my boards in a yard and I just paddle out and go behind there, and it's just, there's no one there, load of birds. I love it.
Sweet or savoury?
Love a bit of cake, so sweet. Love a bit of cake.
What is your mantra?
I've got two mantras, I think. One is the mantra that I use to get motivated. So, you know, to go and train, to go out and it's grim. And that is, it's what I do. So that's the mantra of like, oh, you know, it's what I do. Just get it done. Just do it. So that's a sort of motivation one. The one that I use if I'm starting to feel like I'm coming apart at the seams a bit, if it's, you know, if it's competition, you're getting nervous, maybe it's easy to get intimidated, or particularly on the big, you know, like on a lot of the international racing where it's very scrutinized and it's being broadcast and all that. The mantra there is go through the process. Like, just go through the process, do the process step that is next in front of you. Don't worry about anything else. If the process is, I've got to put a fin on, then do that and do it well. If the next process is, I need to launch and warm up, do that, do it well. If the next process is, I come in and I'm going to eat or drink or do something or stretch, do it, and just go through the process. And that's how I just say to myself, you know, calm down, go through the process.
Make it simple.
Yeah, it's just process at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I suppose some athletes will look at going, I've got to get across the line, and they're thinking about the finish line before they've even actually
the process. The process is, I've got to get to the next buoy, The process is I've got to put another paddle stroke in. But I find that's really useful for dealing with nerves.
Seeing as it's
Yes.
Valentine's, the acronym KISS seems quite appropriate
Yes.
for that then. Keep it simple, stupid.
Well, you know what? I don't like the stupid. I'll be honest with you. I like to say keep it super simple.
Yeah, that's better. I like that.
Yeah, because no one's stupid, right? Yeah, keep it super simple.
Yeah, great. I'm going to change my KISS now to keep it super simple. Love that.
Writing that down.
You see, every day is a learning day.
It is growth mindset, right?
Yeah, Annie, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you.
said you said roughly where you are, but if people want to get in touch with you for coaching, how do they do that?
So Frangipani SUP, there's the website for Frangipani SUP, there's social, so on Insta, Frangipani SUP, and I'm on Frangipani SUP, Anni Riddsill-Smith, but that surname's quite hard to remember, so Frangipani might be a good place to go.
Away. Absolutely way. So, listeners, if this has resonated with you, please give a like and subscribe. Bing! Bell. Go and follow Frangipani SUP. It's not just about the water. It's about you as an athlete as well. And don't forget to click that notification bell so you find out when the next episode drops. Thank you for listening and watching.